Every person has a story, but not everyone has a place to tell it. I'm Frank Swoboda. I've interviewed amazing people all over the planet. I want you to meet them. This week, the most interesting person you've never heard of is...
I'm James Watkins. I'm the most interesting person you've never heard of because of my experiences in this community, serving as a pastor, being a pastor's son, and working in a prison for 28 years. I could share some stories with you.
All right, James Watkins, welcome to the MIP podcast.
Appreciate having you having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here. How often have you been called Happy Watkins' son?
Well, so not only that, but I had 3 older brothers. So most of my, until I was probably in my early 20s, I was either Happy Son or one of my brothers. So yeah, I got used to it.
Right. I had, I was raised Catholic, so it went to Catholic school, and my 2 brothers were the same thing. I was a third brother.
Right.
And so they always called me Jim or John till I was like, years, maybe 6th grade, they finally started calling me by my actual name.
Yeah.
Did you have to pay for the sins of your older brothers as well? Like, you already walk in and they're like, oh, you're one of them?
Not so much.
They were probably good guys.
Well,
my brothers were troublesome.
Yeah, I didn't have, all my brothers were, pretty good athletes. So I had, I had to live up to their expectation. And so walking in, they kind of expected all of us to be football players and wrestlers, and so that's what we did.
Yeah, I never had that problem. My brothers are going to kill me.
I had that too, but yeah, absolutely.
So what was it like to grow up? So you grew up, what neighborhood in Spokane? If we always say, if you're from Spokane, what high school? That's the question everybody asks, right?
So all of us went to Rogers High School. We grew up kind of in the kind of edge of Hilliard. Surprisingly, most people didn't know that we all went to grade school at Grant. My grandmother, my grandmother lived on the east side, so my mom would drop us off, and we went to school at Grant until my grandmother
right down the street here.
Absolutely,
no kidding.
Yeah, so we all. I was the only one that didn't graduate from Grant. I went to Whitman. My grandmother got older and couldn't take care of us, So, but all my older 3 brothers all went to.
Where was Whitman?
Whitman is right down the street from Rogers. If you go like straight down Pittsburgh,
down Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So my parents grew up on Pittsburgh and Liberty.
Oh, okay.
So that was their hood where they grew up as in their family.
And we're just a little bit north on the other end there.
Gotcha.
Kind of Dalkey and Morton.
Oh, Dalkey and Morton. Yeah, totally know where that is. I mean, it's not a big town, James.
No. It's getting bigger, but yeah.
So what was it like to grow up in Spokane for you? Because the experience is very different for all kinds of different people.
I like I said, I had a pretty good. Some people focus on whatever negative. I had a great experience. I had a wonderful grandmother, great parents. Didn't always like my brothers growing up, but I had 3 older brothers.
Oh, you had 3.
Yeah, and their philosophy was, they wouldn't let anybody else touch you, but definitely
they could.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I still have right there.
Yeah.
It still hurts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
My brother just. Boom.
Yeah, took I tell people we didn't take a lot of L's in the street, but you took them at home. So, but really enjoyed family was kind of the center of our life. The church was the center of our life, and everything else kind of filled in outside of that. But it was. I look back and have nothing but fondness for my childhood, even though everybody has their difficulties, and sometimes like just moving from Grant, which was probably at the time, I don't know if it is anymore, kind of the most highly populated black population in Spokane. Whitman,
right?
To Whitman, who had 3 black kids. Wow! And so that was a culture shock.
I bet.
But like I said. Strong family, strong church. We had a strong community. It was good.
Not a bad time to grow up in that era either, really.
I don't think so. I thought it was a great time to grow up. You kind of had your you're kind of at the tail end of kind of the civil rights and all that stuff that was going on. So you still felt like you had a foot in that, and you knew a lot of people who were involved, and you had personal experience. Even though I was born in '71, so I never, I wasn't there like when Dr. King died. It felt like I had, and
you'd heard the story so much.
Yeah, heard the story,
seen the footage.
Absolutely, absolutely, and for me, one of the things, we were the kind of the only black family on our block, but our whole block was like a big family, and still today, all the guys who grew up, we always say Dalkey Street, and you could, back in those days, you could ride your bike. You could leave your bike out. You could.
This is the same experience I had over by Shadle.
Yeah,
same neighborhood. I knew everybody.
Knew everybody.
Outside, we just stayed out all day.
You spend the night at each other's houses. My dad was a heck of a barbecue guy, and so when he turned on the pits, all the kids came. And our house was always kind of the house where everybody had fun at, enjoyed it, kind of a safe environment. So I really and speaking of diverse, it was pretty diverse, and so just had a really great experience.
So for those who don't know, your dad is Happy Watkins.
Yes.
Now he is a Baptist minister.
Yep.
Right, and you are a Baptist minister. You've taken that over.
Yes, sir.
Explain to me Happy Watkins the very best you can, because if people have not met this guy, he's unforgettable. Is that the right word?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Growing up, he was just my dad. So I didn't really, until I got a little bit older. He was just our dad. Saturday mornings, no matter how many friends we had, he got up, cooked breakfast for us. He was always, always had us in church. Always kept us busy with sports. He was a strict disciplinarian.
Church on Sunday.
Church on Sunday.
Absolutely.
Church on Wednesday. Church Saturday sometimes.
Wow.
All those, and he was about family. He was about, he was about church. I didn't realize the sacrifice that he made for his community until I was much older. Matter of fact, I said when I was like in high school and college, I would never do what he's doing. He would, I tell people he's a really nice guy, and we have a running joke that he'll get robbed in a graveyard because he'll give up anything for anybody, and we
literally
just,
this pen is from your dad.
Oh yeah,
we filmed at Gonzaga Prep.
Yeah.
You and he and I I said, hey, I need a pen. He's like, here, I got one.
Yeah.
Gave me his pen. I used it for the interview. I gave it back to him. He goes, you keep that.
Yeah.
And I've been keeping it the whole time just because it came from Happy.
Absolutely.
And he's still I think he's still doing great. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know how old he is now, right?
Well, he's 81. He's definitely had some health challenges and had a minor stroke, and seems like he's more resilient now than he was 10 years ago.
Well, we had an experience we did an amazing project for the Gonzaga Prep Hall of Fame.
I remember.
And we put a piece together that Zach, actually our producer of the podcast, you just met him, he edited that. It was an amazing video on the history and the life of Carl Maxey. Because Carl was finally rightfully put into the Hall of Fame at Gonzaga Prep. And we had 8 videos to do within like a very short amount of time. Let me just put it that way. We were up here there were 4 people here at like 3 a.m. working on projects because we wanted to get it so right. Especially that one, because it just mattered to this town, this community. I had no idea what that guy was. I had no idea who he was. I knew his son, Bevan, but I didn't realize. And my dad had always talked about Carl Maxey, man, because he went to Gonzaga about the same era that Carl had, and younger, but always with reverence of what a great boxer he was and what a great man he was, and just always talked really great about Carl. So I didn't know who he was. I just knew, Carl Maxey was a big deal. In fact, for a long time, I didn't realize he was even from Spokane. I just thought he was this great civil rights leader, which he really was.
Yeah,
that absolutely. I found out later. So I mean, that whole experience was. And your dad. So we filmed that, and Happy narrated it. We had him narrate the script, and really just needed him to read it. And he had a lot of trouble because he's just having memory loss or whatever. And wanted to make it great, but boy, when he got it right, it was. There is only one voice like that, and there's only one person that could pull that off. Yeah. And you would never know. But I mean, it took us an hour to read something that it would have taken you 5 minutes, probably 10. Right. And I just realized, wow. And he was like, I'm not going to stop doing this. I'm like, Happy, you know what? We don't need to do this. He goes, no, we're doing this. And it was a struggle. Yeah. And then a month ago, interview him. Not the same guy. And he had a stroke in between.
Right.
So I'm just like, I thought, I thought he looked great.
Yeah,
Maybe he's had a little rebound or something. Maybe COVID got out of his system or something. But
well, I think that for him, the summer, he loves the summer, and I think the summer he just perks up and he does much better, and he's out more and he's out in his yard more. So
he's around the barbecue pit, man.
Not in recent years. But, me and one of my brothers are the primary.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's still there.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Critiquing.
Critiquing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. So he was the pastor of what church, and how, and what role did he play? I think in the city, he's really become a legendary figure and kind of a, one of the greats that this town's ever had.
Yeah, he as I got older, probably, I'm sure prior to that, but my recollection when I first started focusing on his community outreach was probably when I was in high school. And one of the things he was, he's NAACP president. He served on so many committees. And he's just a giving person. And so he play Santa Claus. I got pictures of him playing Santa Claus. He just would do anything. And then he became the pastor of New Hope Baptist Church, and he was a pastor for about 30 years. He served under as assistant pastor in a couple of other churches, and he always service was huge for him. He would do a lot of things. He would never take a dime. He was committed to helping people, and I thought, I'm never doing that. He would give his last dime.
It kind of pissed you off a little, probably.
It would.
You're getting taken, Dad.
Yeah. I thought that, and
my dad was sort of that way too.
Yeah, it's hard for a son to sit back, and then some of the same people that he helped would talk about him, and that's very difficult. But what I truly learned from him was serving God, serving your family, and serving your community. And then if you can fit in whatever you can fit in outside of that.
It's gravy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like I said, I've seen he's a very generous guy. He always helped. Doors of our house was open, and so my kids have learned the same. Their friends are always welcome. They come. It's a safe environment. Love to. Obviously, food is a big part of our family. So
mine too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so that was with him, and like I said, his community outreach, obviously the I Have a Dream speech, I first remember it probably when I was in junior high school. From him.
Yeah. And because he does it annually, does he not?
This year he couldn't do it. He hasn't done it last year.
For decades.
For the last 40 years, probably close to 40 years. And he would get called out probably 50, 60 times a year. And so,
really,
he would do it at schools. He would go all over the state, and and he was called out, probably from November to February, and so he rarely ever turned anybody down. Especially for the first 10 years, I don't think he just wouldn't accept payment, that kind of thing. It was his way. It was his way of serving his community, and that opened the door for him to have conversation with a lot of people, to help people.
Yeah.
And it put him in connection with people that could help people, and so that was always a way for him to to give back.
Well, and Spokane still, I don't know what the percentage is now, but 2% African American, 5 maybe. But my whole life, I always felt like I wish I had black friends. Yeah. I mean, I just don't know anybody, literally. And, one guy at Gonzaga Prep that was still a good friend, Owen Bryant, that I'd known forever. But outside of Owen, I just didn't really know anybody. Went to Gonzaga University, same challenge there, Didn't really have that. It wasn't in my circle.
Right.
And it's always sort of bugged me, And the reverse, though, was what you had to deal with in this town.
Right.
How was that experience? Because I felt like, I saw racism with my grandparents, and they were. It wasn't malicious.
Right.
Does that make? I didn't find it malicious, but it was cringy for me, and for them not. And now I look back and just go, I can't believe they even spoke that way.
Yeah.
And you watch the pendulum change for the better, I think.
Absolutely.
But still, It's just, I have no idea what that's like to be in your shoes. I just don't.
Yeah. It's disheartening, and I shared with somebody as many positive experiences as I had, as many great friends of every color I have.
Because compared to my grandmother's time and my grandfather's time, our time growing up here, I know was better than than what your dad had to go through.
Oh yeah, and my dad came from New York. He was from the Bronx of New York. So when he came here in the military,
That's right.
Culture shock. But I was sharing. People ask me that, and one of the things I applaud my parents for is they never allowed us to use that as an excuse. And so it didn't mean it wasn't difficult. It didn't mean you didn't see it. You saw it in school. You saw it all over. And I've shared with people, man, my most difficult. I think the most difficult thing that I've had to overcome in Spokane is going to school for my kids for the same reason that my parents went to school for me, concerning racism, concerning those kind of things. That's probably the most disheartening thing. That we still face, like some of the same issues after all these years
are still there.
They're still there, and so it's always something that you have to acknowledge. It's always something that you have to be prepared to fight. And I think that the way we do it is good, honest, hard conversation. The more that we shy away from those conversations, it'll never get resolved. And I think we always try to move the pin forward, and we always try to do that. But it's sometimes difficult. Like I said, even with my kids, even with Ephraim, you got to meet Ephraim.
Oh, amazing kid, dude, incredible.
Yeah, he went.
We will talk about that guy.
Yeah, if it wasn't for an amazing family. Kids, things that happened to him probably would have crushed regular kids. And a lot of kids suffered. Things that happened to friends of mine who didn't have the family set up, the family structure that I have.
Safety net.
Absolutely.
Support.
The support, and parents pushing them past whatever they were going through, suffered and struggled for years, and some of my friends had told me that when we were in our late 20s about their high school experience, and it was much different than mine. Even though mine was tough, theirs was much different because they didn't have the home life. They didn't have
and that's still going on.
Absolutely,
and in a lot of ways worse.
Absolutely worse.
Especially with the economic conditions that we're facing.
Absolutely.
Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here, really, was to talk about that stuff, because I think it just gets sort of in the background and people move by and don't really deal with it. A lot came out, obviously, during Black Lives Matter about this whole subject and this idea of white privilege. And I had not considered that. So that's how bad I am. I mean, and I don't think most people who live in this town certainly maybe still don't. Majority don't, for sure. But I remember listening to an amazing podcast. It was during COVID. So Pete Carroll, the coach of the Seahawks, and Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors, two white guys of privilege, no doubt, but have dealt with the black community every day. Absolutely. I mean, all the time. Really care about it. Really thinking that they are much more in touch with African Americans than most, and they are.
Right.
They had they had a podcast because they were killing time during COVID and nobody could do anything.
Right.
And so they had these great podcasts. And you should go listen to it if you ever get a chance, because they had Doc Rivers on. And Doc Rivers' dad was a police officer in, I want to say, somewhere in Illinois, small town, Illinois. And it was the black town, and across the river was the white town. I don't even know where. But he was the police chief or one of the head cops there, and so Doc would be like, when we were kids, we would just go to the other side, go across the river and go over there because they're a great, great diner or something to go have some food, and his dad would always say, "Be careful when you go over there and don't go at night." And he's like, "You're the police chief, dude," and he's like, "Not over there, I'm not."
Right.
And he brought up this conversation with Pete Carroll and Steve Kerr and said, "When you guys get pulled over, what's it like by a cop?" And he goes, "And my dad's a cop." And they're like, "I don't know. I'm pissed that I got pulled over." They're like, "Walk me through it." I'm like, pissed I got pulled over. I got to find my stuff. What did I do? Maybe I can talk him out of it. hey, how you doing, man? Sorry, I know it was going too bad. He goes, you ever scared of that moment? And they both go, never. Have you ever been scared when a cop pulls you over? Never. And he said, my life always. And it is the most terrifying experience in my life. And my dad was a police chief or police officer anyway forever. And that, you could hear these two guys experience what I experienced when I heard it too. Like, I never thought of that. And I have tons of police officer friends who do a great job and who are awesome. And they are aware of that at, I think, a level now they weren't before.
Sure.
What is it like for you? And has it been like? And what's it like for your kids?
You know, my brother was a police officer in the 80s and 90s. And so one of the things that he schooled me very well about, and my brothers, was interaction with the police, because he saw it firsthand. And so I never could figure out, why is he so specific, and why do I have to do all of this? And
what would he tell you?
He would,
show him your hands, man.
He would tell me to put I could tell you, he used to run me through it before I start driving. Turn your dome light on, put your hands on the wheel, roll down your windows. My friends used to think that it was stupid, because they never did this.
Nobody told them.
No,
they didn't have a brother was a cop.
No, and
it is stupid.
Yeah,
they're right.
And so, but I followed it because he was so adamant about it, and I didn't realize. And
you made a promise
for
to
years.
him.
Yeah, I didn't realize for years, why was he so adamant about me, doing all those things.
Right, it is odd.
Yeah, and just like I wrestled at North Idaho College, and I'm there during Ruby Ridge.
Oh wow!
And so crazy experience, Coeur d'Alene, in 1990, 89, 90, 92, when I was there, was a different place. And
it was.
And when Ruby Ridge kicked off, again, my
the
brother
Aryan
was,
Nation compound down the road
right,
on Hayden Lake,
6 miles away.
Yep.
And my brother was very, very concerned, not just about police, but about all those things. And along with my parents, but very concerned about how I dealt with it, where I went, and a lot of things that my parents, my brother, talked to me about, and how to handle things. My other friends didn't get those conversations. And so even with my three boys, I'm very specific. I've worked in corrections for 28 years.
Right.
And
that's
so,
the other thing we'll talk about today.
Yeah. And so I'm very specific about making sure that they're respectful, that they follow some of the other rules. My youngest is just getting ready to start driving, so I'm getting ready to run him through the same thing, because unfortunately, I think things have gotten better. There's a better awareness, but I want my son to come home.
But you're still telling him this.
Absolutely. I want my son to come home, and I tell people, I said, whatever's going on, whatever happens, man, you have a dad who will go to whatever degree to defend you. You just come home.
You just come home.
And my friends don't say that to their sons.
Right. And the hope would be that they don't have to tell their kids that.
Absolutely. And when fathers,
when that doesn't happen, this is a different America.
You'll know that we have we've made some strides.
Yeah, because that was the first time I realized, oh wow, I really do have white privilege, big time. Yeah. I'm just like, what are you talking about? I don't know what that means.
Right.
Really, didn't know what it physically felt like and meant. But when I heard that conversation and Doc Rivers say that, I thought, oh yeah, no, that's never been my experience. And it's not the cops. It's nothing. I mean, it's not, it's, you just, for lots of good reasons, have to go through that experience, right? Yeah. And have to have that be what's going on.
I was fortunate in this, that I didn't have the apprehension that a lot of people had, because I did have that relationship with a lot of police officers through my
right.
I was a kid that grew up doing judo, and my judo instructor was a police officer, so I had those relationships.
Yeah.
So
you've seen a lot of good on that side.
I've got to see both. I've had relationships, I've had and that's that's something that I've tried to also show my kids. There's a lot that they see on social media that they take in that they don't understand, and obviously it makes them very emotional. And
Can
I've
you
heard
give me an
things,
example?
any like George Floyd, any of these things that have been horrific, and when some of our kids, unless we have discussion with them, they're going to take that like that's the way it is. That's what happens everywhere.
There's
That's what
no
happens
hope.
all the time. There's no hope. And so again, I also want to make sure that they understand. And the reason that I'm hard on you, or the reason I'm very specific about how I want you to handle things, is because I do want you to come home. But I don't want you to take that for every experience. I don't want you to think that every time you get pulled over, that's going to happen. Because that's not accurate too. I have a lot of good friends who are police officers. Obviously I've worked in corrections for 28 years, and so one of the things that I try to do is to make that change. I want to build that relationship so that people can have a little bit more. People are really scared when they get pulled over.
Yeah.
There's a population here that are really scared, and it's real. As I've gotten older,
They can't not feel it.
Yeah, as I've gotten older, obviously. I don't have that. But when I was younger, and part of it had to do with I don't want to say my brother instilled fear in me, but what he did was made sure that I understood the possibility of what could happen, by simply,
A gesture here.
Yeah. I can tell you, and this is a lot of years ago. Some guys that I played that I was a wrestler. They played basketball. They came to town. And they got out the airport. They got a rental car. They're driving down. They got pulled over. They hadn't been driving for 15 minutes, and these guys don't. They're from the East Coast. And when they got pulled over, they had to pull up their shirts and got pictures taken of them. And that was their welcome to Spokane. And so they really struggled. They really struggled with that, and more than I think people will ever know. And so they were so scared that all they wanted to do, they didn't care what they were asked. They just wanted to make it to my house.
Yeah.
And when they made it to my house, obviously, my dad and my brother got involved. But still, like, you'll never take that experience away from them.
No.
And so
they don't know what that 20 minutes was like, that half hour.
Yeah. And so with all that, I want to make sure that my kids are aware. But I don't want them to live in that
or create the atmosphere where that's
Absolutely.
The reality, right?
Absolutely.
Like, let's change this.
Yeah, and so kind of plug. So I've always pushed my kids to have friends of every race, every that you don't because of what you see in the world doesn't mean that should be a reflection in your life.
Right.
And so not all. I know that I'm not from prep, and I know you are, but just like you from going to prep, he came out of a couple bad experiences in grade school and junior high.
Yeah.
That would have taken down most, but he used it to, kind of propel himself into doing better, loving. I know we don't even talk about that anymore, about loving one another, those kind of things. But his positive experience was that he was going to be the best that he could be. And everything he could do, he was going to be a leader. He was going to love people. He was going to help people.
Ephraim, you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he took that to the limit. He
is remarkable.
I tell people, it's in this day and age, for him to be the first Black ASB president at prep.
I know.
In
So
however
cool.
many years, it was a huge achievement.
A huge achievement.
But it was more about his character and his personality.
Yeah.
And so
right. I know we joked about it. I was ASP president at prep.
Oh,
too,
were you really?
Yeah. So we were talking about being in that little club,
Yeah.
and it's so cool. But it's sad that it took this long for that to happen. In a way. But very cool that it happened.
Absolutely. Great relationships that he'll have for the rest of his life.
That guy would have been ASP president in 1985, though, at Gonzaga Pro. Let me tell you, because he's something else. Yeah. I mean, nobody doesn't like that guy. I mean, well done.
Yeah. And the one thing that I always, me and him, I tell him that everybody sees you where you are now, but some of the, along with all the positive of having strong family, great grand, I tell them that my dad picked up my kids every day from school from K to 8th grade, and I said you probably don't have very many grandfathers who do that, but every day picked them up for all those years, and so you
and
have
happily
that,
so,
and absolutely
planned
his day around it. Called me at work because somebody violated a rule in the picking up, and he was legitimately upset. Like, I was like, wow, like that's what your life has come to, the crossing guard didn't hold somebody in tow. And I thought, but those positive experiences, and I told him, I said, man, that's what got you to where you are. But I said, what molded you, what shaped you also are the bad experiences you had, getting called the N-word at school, having a teacher not believe you, having those are things that mold you.
You have to have the contrast.
Absolutely,
you do.
And
the tough stuff makes the good stuff better.
Absolutely. And I share with them that those are the stories that you got to tell. Also, all your achievements are great, man. They're I more than I could have ever expected. But I said, what really molded you are the bad experiences you had, and the tough experiences that you had. Not that it kept you there, but those are what's going to get because somebody else is going through the same thing that you're going through, and they need to know that.
Right.
And so, like I said, that was probably for me one of the most disheartening things as a parent. That my parents went to school, in the mid '80s, and for the same thing I went to school for, racial issues,
right.
And that was very tough for me to deal with. I just, I always thought when I had kids, man, we're going to be so far
a different world.
We're going to be so far beyond, but it brought me back to understand that we still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and somebody's maybe slipped back a little.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
I think.
Yeah.
It seems like it.
Absolutely.
You would know way better, but I just, some of the attitudes are just beyond me.
Yeah.
That I see now. Maybe it's just because social media is available now and all that.
Yeah,
it's not
largely
hidden as much under the rocks,
right.
But
right.
but it's there. You mentioned incarceration and you're working in that.
Mm-hmm.
So you are now. So before we get to that, you took over for your dad. So when did Happy retire? And New Hope, where is New Hope Baptist Church?
We're on Argonne and Boone.
Okay.
9021 East Boone. So
Okay.
we're on Argonne and Boone. We were for 40 plus years we were on 4th and Green, right behind Fred Meyer's.
Okay.
And about 6 years ago we moved out. We moved out to out there
at the Valley.
And then 6 months after that, I took over he retired, and I took over.
So what was that conversation like? I mean, he's a legend. He's my dad. How was that for you?
I was his assistant pastor for about 6-7 years.
Okay.
And people were always asking me, and I always kept, and I always stuck to the fact that when he's ready, I'm not going to push the issue. I'm not going to force the issue.
So backing up before that, what was the conversation like when he asked you to be the assistant pastor? Were you all in, or were you like, I don't know about this, Dad?
I was pretty much all in. I thought that's cool. I kind of figured that walking in my dad's footsteps, I kind of wanted to branch out by myself, to another church where I wasn't under him. But then, I thought, why would I?
Why would you? Yeah.
And so
it's a beautiful thing, actually.
Absolutely, and it was a beautiful experience. It's definitely I probably had a tougher time than if I would, because he had a higher level of expectation and probably asked me to do things that he wouldn't ask other people.
It would have been easier somewhere else.
It would have been easier. He made sure that
live up to
always prepared. But when we had the conversation, people were asking me for years, several years prior to, don't you think it's your time? And I said, when it's his time. Because not only am I taking over for him as a pastor, he's my dad, and I want to make sure that our relationship is good.
Yeah.
And so I don't want him to ever feel like he was pushed out. I want to make sure that he was ready, and when he was ready, he came to me and told me, and I was more than accepting.
How was that to work with your dad? My son works with me now. My daughter's actually home she's got a break here for her college, and she came in today, and she's going to help, and they want to be here, and It was really his idea, and he's amazing. He's like taking our company to a whole other level. He's just been amazing. But I was sort of like, do you really want to do this? Like, what's it like for Clancy Welch? Tim Welch is Garco Construction, amazing guy. Built this town, built the kennel, built the arena, built all kinds of stuff. And Clancy's his son, probably same age as you, same era, I think. I think so. Maybe he's a little younger, but he was just here yesterday. We were filming a thing with him, and I really was, after he left, I thought, I want to ask him what it's like. What's it like for him to work with Tim? Because he's, Tim's still working there. They're still making projects, and Clancy sort of, I think runs the operation now. But it was really curious when I talked to him about his dad. He always calls him Tim. and
I haven't got there yet.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that's like. What's it like for you what was that like? Any advice for the old guy here on the other side of it?
One of the things
I love it.
I think I had to prepare the people more than I had to prepare him. One of the things that when we had the conversation, he says, "Hey, I have full faith in you. I'm here if you need me, but this is your time." We had conversations about how seasons run as opposed to years, and he goes, this is the season that you've been brought into. And so we had that conversation. So I had full faith, and I always wanted to respect him. But the whole time I was his assistant pastor, and even prior to I was a deacon, I wanted to learn from him. And I wanted to learn everything that I could learn from him. And so I tell people that, like, you'll never see me disrespect my dad. That just won't happen. But I prepared the people by saying I'm a different person, and I'm not him, and I don't operate like him, and this is the way he does things, and this is the way I do things. And if you respect it, then it's going to be fine, And so we have
That's
flourished.
really cool.
Yeah, we've absolutely flourished, and we've done things, and had great. We've had a great experience in the last 6 years since I've taken over. But it's all, I tell you, you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and I'll never minimize what he did, and he never minimized what people did before him. And I think that one of the things that is lacking in today's society is our respect for our elders. And everybody wants to do something new and different, which I'm okay. I love creativity, but I think that we should always honor. I think that's what's lacking in our community. We don't honor our elders, so I'm not that guy. So I'm always going to honor my dad and everybody else. We recently had his best friend pass away, Ivan Bush, who he worked with for 4 decades in the city, civil rights, helping people, so those are guys that I grew up with.
They're the giants,
and I and I want to learn for how they did things, and I don't think we always have to reinvent the wheel, but also you got to allow new leaders to lead and lead how they're built to lead. And so when I was
with. When we filmed at his house and recorded him, and he's home, so he's really comfortable. But he told some great stories about. We obviously reminisced about Carl a lot, Carl Maxey, and the experience of Carl. And I want to ask you about that. But he also talked about he got asked a lot by the leaders of this town to represent the black community and to bring balance. And you kind of I think you could feel from him. He mentioned in sort of his own way, that there's this tokenism in there somewhere, but he never looked at it that way. Right. And maybe I'm misunderstanding him, but it was like I could choose that, or I could choose no. I'm going to take this opportunity to kick a door down, and to actually represent this town and to be involved in that and recruit people of color to be in this community and that kind of stuff. Sure. And the intention for the people that recruited him really and asked him to be a part of that was the right intention, he thought, because they want a diverse town too. And the only way we get that isn't going to come from them. Right. So he got sent out as an ambassador. Am I right about that? And sort of took it on, which gratefully, I think.
So even when he felt like everybody's didn't have the truest intention, he would always share with us that what the devil meant for his evil, God meant for good. And when you kick in that, when you're given an opportunity, some people look at it as a trial, a difficulty, and back off it. But he goes, if you go through that door, that's where your blessing is. You're going to bless other people. And so he took those opportunities to bless people and to he
kind of said yes.
Absolutely. all the time.
All the time.
All the time. And he said once people know you, once people know who you are, once people know what you've done, it doesn't matter who invites you to the table.
Right.
You're always, you know, and he said, and he always said, you can't do anything until you're invited to the table.
That's right.
You know, and he said, so he took opportunities where even he didn't think that it was, you know, that people had the most truest intentions and really wanted him there, but they made a mistake by getting him there. And so he and he shared that with me. He said it's not for you to go in and fight with everybody, but it's for you to go in and open doors for other people, because other people did that for you. And so that's what I believe.
Well, and honestly, that's how we connected, because we got asked to do a project for Gonzaga Prep, a really cool project, and Michael Doherty, the president of Prep, thankfully kicked the door down,
Absolutely.
Really went to your church and went to either you or your dad and said, we need, a BIPOC community in this school more, help us out. And I mean, these are my words and nobody else's. And if I got that wrong, let me know. But Happy's on the board. You're on the board of Gonzaga Prep, which is traditionally, a pretty small minority population there, although now way more diverse
Absolutely.
than people at all
Absolutely.
realize. I mean, phenomenally diverse.
Absolutely.
And it's people like you and Ephraim and Happy that have all been a part of that and said yes, right? And Michael's intentions were absolutely right, because we're a rich community when everybody's a part of it.
I agree.
How did that happen? Because I know that I was just pleased that you guys were part of it.
I have to be honest. Majority of that, my relationship with Michael has to do with Ephraim, and my dad. And when Ephraim was probably a freshman in high school, he built a relationship, which is not very common, with the principal of the school, the president of the school.
No,
and it's not
but it's also not surprising knowing Ephraim.
Right. And
he's going to build a relationship with everybody.
And I remember the first time he came and introduced himself at a football. I didn't know who he was, and Michael,
yeah,
and he introduced himself, and
he's a Chicago guy.
He's a Chicago guy, yeah. Introduced himself, and through that relationship, he became good friends with my dad, and then wanted to collaborate, and I became good friends with him. He's done an amazing job, especially in this area. And
super intentional about it. And
absolutely.
Again, not shying back about the conversation.
Absolutely. And probably push forward the needle a little bit further than some people were ready to to settle for.
Hey, it's a Jesuit school, man. They never stop doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I've had lots of conversations in here about that, and that's their job.
Yeah, absolutely. That experience dealing with him, and really his commitment to I've never seen. Me and all my brothers went to the same school. We were all standout football players, standout wrestlers. Mm-hmm. Good, and I don't remember a principal ever coming to church. And I bet you I've probably seen Mr. Dougherty at least 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
He's been there when Ephraim spoke on multiple occasions, and he shows up and he supported his president. He's even before Ephraim became the president, and that spoke volumes for me about who he is.
He showed up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And not only showed up, but brought his wife and kids, which always isn't, which is a true testament of the kind of man you are. You know? And
right.
So,
that's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and the other side of this coin is a dude from Rogers, this kid's going to prep. What the hell? That must not have been an easy pill for you.
No, I got harassed a lot. I got harassed a lot. Even though the people who were harassing
any
me,
school,
well, even
other than Rogers,
the guys who were harassing me, they didn't send their kids to Rogers either. But I got made fun of a lot, and but I know it was out of love.
What are you doing, man?
Oh yeah,
going to prep? What are you talking about?
Oh, we I got it a lot, especially the first couple of years, and so
all in good fun, probably, and maybe not.
Not all.
Not.
Yeah, I shared with members of of the committee, I told him, I said, I was not a Prep fan. I go, we got beat up by Prep in the football field, and I had friends who went here and all that. And I said it was a conversation in one of the meetings. I was not sold. I didn't want to pay for school, all these different things. I'm in Prep. I feel like my skin's crawling, and
about enemy territory here, people.
Enemy territory. And in one of the conversations, I heard a gentleman get up and say, "We're here to build Christian leaders," and something clicked in me that moment. It didn't matter what the sacrifice was. It didn't matter what it was going to take. I knew at that moment, this is where my kid's going to go.
It's true.
And I really wanted my kids to be able to really fit that mold. And it was everything. How many kids go to school? College didn't woo me. Grade, all the different that, none of that. But when they said that, that's when I knew.
Huh. That's cool.
Yeah.
I meant we talked about Carl Maxey. Did you know Carl?
Yeah. He was
what was he like, man?
He was a bigger than life figure. When I was young.
I mean, the hair.
When I was
alone was awesome.
When I was young, I used to think he was Don King.
I swear to God.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that I did too.
Yeah.
I was like, is that Don King?
Yeah.
The hair was just like
one of the things that
they're very similar body type and the hair.
And got some similar personalities.
Oh yeah,
but,
yeah.
One of the things that
fearless.
I always absolutely loved about him was growing up. There were very few people who could call me and my brothers by name. It was always
you couldn't tell that you guys all looked the same.
Yeah, it was just always Watkins,
Yeah, hey Watkins.
And I was the youngest, and I remember having a conversation with him, and he always called me by my first name, and I always thought that was impressive.
That is impressive.
Absolutely impressive. I always, no matter what he was, he was just a bigger than life, figure. He was always jovial, super intelligent,
brilliant.
And he always garnered a lot of respect. And so I never got to see him in the courtroom, but I've heard he was just masterful.
Unbelievable, yeah.
And so obviously one of the guys that I obviously looked up to. And again, I tell people I got experience because of my dad and because of who he had us around and who he associated with. It was just always an awesome experience, and it didn't matter where you saw him. He always was the same guy.
Yeah.
He never
didn't change for the arena.
No.
That's cool.
He was always the same guy, and so that's what I always respected about him.
One of the things we learned in the producing that video, that's one of the cool parts of my job, is we get to learn all kinds of stuff for just a little bit of a time. We drop into all kinds of worlds, and one of I did not realize he represented during the 60s.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was 3 protesters were murdered.
Yeah.
I think a Jewish white kid and then a couple black kids that maybe tortured and killed in the 60s. And he went back and represented as part of the legal team.
Right.
And I think got justice done.
Yeah.
And really was one of the civil rights attorneys in America, not just here in Spokane.
Oh, yeah.
And I did not realize that. I was just I knew all his accolades as a boxer, and I knew all his accolades as an athlete and all that stuff. And the stuff that he overcame was amazing. And we also learned the sad stuff about, when he was an orphan.
Right.
And nobody wanted to adopt him.
Right.
Black kid in Spokane, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Ended up going to a native school run by the Jesuits. Came back out, and he was too old to be on his own, but no one would adopt him.
Right.
And he ended up having to live most of his high school life, I think, living at in the juvenile detention, jail was his home.
Right.
That pissed me off a lot when I heard that. And Zach, when we were making this, Zach's from Chicago, and he's just like, "What?"
Yeah.
People don't realize the stuff he overcame.
Absolutely.
Which just fueled him, I would guess. You
Absolutely.
have a choice. You either get fueled by that or you don't.
Right.
And he got fueled by it.
He sure did.
Yeah.
Not only, obviously being a boxer, the tough, probably the tough experience growing up on a Native American reservation, all these experiences that he had, definitely prepared him for what he was getting ready to do in his life.
Yeah,
and
that's
so,
true. Like you talked about the bad stuff, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't forget the bad stuff.
You can't. The tough stuff is what molds you. You know?
Right.
And
right.
but the one thing I liked about him is he treated everybody the same. Everybody with kindness. You would have never known who he was, an attorney. You would have never known he was a boxer.
You just wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. He just treated everybody kind. With the same kind of grace, same kind of love. You know, no matter who you were.
Yeah.
And had a heart for kids.
Right.
You know?
Well, and that leads to the Carl Maxey Center, which is really its intention is to give opportunities, right?
Right.
To the BIPOC community, particularly in East Central, right? Grand Elementary, that was all in that same neighborhood.
That's my old grandmother's old neighborhood.
That's your grandma's old neighborhood.
Yeah.
Where did she live?
She lived on 616 East Hartson, so she was just up the street.
Yeah, just up the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, again, I don't know if you could have named the center after somebody more dynamic and who stood in the place for a lot of people to help, and again, I share with people, if you're not ready, and I don't mean like a physical fight, but if you're not ready to fight,
take a stand.
Your life has to be prepared for whatever's going to happen, and everybody's not ready for that. Everybody's not ready for that. Everybody's not built for that. He absolutely was. And when you look at the individuals who are in our community, even my dad, who doesn't talk about the tough experiences of his childhood, but he was the oldest of 16 in the Bronx.
Oldest of 16.
Excuse me, oldest of 10. Oldest of 10.
That's enough.
Yeah, oldest of 10.
I'm one of 8, so I know.
Ooh, 8, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he grew up in a 3-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartment,
everybody sharing it.
Absolutely. And tough experience, and his dad died when he was 16, and
wow.
He was a lot
the dad.
He was, and raised his youngest siblings and brought him out here to raise, he just, and those experiences obviously shaped who he was and wanted his kids to have a little better.
Yeah.
Well,
what a life, and just an attitude. Like, he is happy.
Absolutely.
Do you know where that name came from?
That's so it's funny you ask. I've been asked that probably 1,000 times. It's actually his middle name. Percy Happy Watkins. It's actually his middle name.
So my grandfather's name was Happy.
Oh, really?
That was his nickname.
Yeah.
Yeah, his name was Adelbert Half-Pap.
Really?
And everybody called him Happy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when I met your dad, I was just like, oh my gosh, you're the only other Happy I ever know. But I never got to meet my grandfather. But that was his nickname too, and apparently he was a happy guy.
Yeah, this was his actual legal
name.
Birth name, and
wow.
So yeah,
he's lived into it.
Yeah, my oldest brother is Percy Happy Watkins III, which he doesn't like people to know his middle name.
He's not living into the Happy.
No.
He's gonna kill you for this.
I know.
Oh, that's funny. Well, the other person who's like ready for to take a stand was Sandy Williams.
Right.
And Sandy, the sad part of so many sad things about her leaving us way too soon, right? Because she passed away in a freak accident flying in a plane in the San Juan Islands. I don't know, just about a year ago almost now, in November, I think it was. Last November, she was scheduled to be right in that chair.
Wow. On
Tuesday. I had interviewed her about a month before for a project for Launch Northwest, which is this incredible thing that Innovia Foundation is doing, trying to get a college education for every kid who graduates from high school in Spokane here coming up in the next few years. And she was on the original board for figuring that out, one of the early stakeholders in that conversation. So we're like, hey, we're doing a video about that Launch Northwest kind of idea and campaign, and she was one of the first people to interview about it because she was a part of it from the very beginning. So we had this great interview with her at the Carl Maxey Center. It's just super cool. We were kind of the same tribe too, same age a little bit, and I just thought she was great. I'm like, would you be on my podcast? She goes, yeah, I would love to. So I texted her, I think it was Friday before, like, hey, see you on Tuesday. She goes, yeah, I'll be there. And then she was over there when I texted her, and she passed away on Sunday, 2 days before she was going to be right here in this chair. Wow. And I just, it hit me. Yeah. And I didn't know her. Right. I mean, what did she mean to you in this community?
So I long before I knew Sandy, her mother attended our church. So I met Sandy through her mom, who was and her dad, who was two dynamic individuals, and they'd have to be
absolutely have a person like that.
Yeah, great experiences with the mom and dad, and then I met and her daughter.
And she grew up here in Spokane too.
Yeah, her daughter who used to come here, and so I knew all of them before I knew Sandy. And so initially when I met Sandy, she just seemed quiet.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Oh, yeah,
quiet.
she was like, I don't really want to, like, not thrilled to be interviewed.
Yeah. She always seemed quiet. And then as years
hell of
progressed,
a writer, man.
As years progressed, I started seeing her out in the community fighting for different things. And I always thought, until one day I was in a meeting with her, and there was some opposition, and nobody really stood up, and I saw her jump into action.
She called it out.
And I think that she was one in that meeting. She was probably one of the only people who could do it the way she did it, and she was very passionate. I'll say the least. She was very passionate, and so had a lot of respect. And her work will go on.
Yeah,
her work will go on. Yeah. And so again, she had a great relationship with my dad. They partnered. My dad really supported our church, supported the paper, everything, Black Lens,
yep.
And
that she published.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that her work is going to continue.
Yeah. What did that paper mean to you all?
I think a lot of people in the
your
community,
family and the community.
Well, I think a lot of people in the community didn't fully understand what the paper meant. I don't think until and this is the bad thing. I don't think people understood what she put into that paper and what it took for her to get that paper off I'm telling you, and having conversation, when you have conversation about, it was exhausting for her.
Oh.
It was her life, and
it really was. Yeah.
And people don't understand the work that it took to get that paper off every month. And so I think some people were very casual about it. I think it was a blessing to so many people because it brought local issues, it brought national issues, it brought attention to things that probably people would see, but not really have any in-depth knowledge of. So I think it was
exposure to things that never would have found the light of day otherwise.
Absolutely, absolutely. With any kind of clarity,
right? Yeah,
and so that was her life. I can't tell you, you couldn't pay me enough to do that. No, I'm serious. You couldn't.
Well, and I even think I think we had a conversation about it, whether it was on camera or not. I don't know, but I hear them like, oh, that was a lot.
Not only that, but it's
a cross sometimes.
Well, she took them and drove them to every site, I mean, that kind of stuff. And
that's badass. Actually, that's really cool.
I don't think you're going to,
you wouldn't have done it. Yeah.
You couldn't have paid me to do it.
No.
And she did it. And, she could have, one of the things I've always said is that she probably could have, if she wanted to, went into pretty much any kind of work area and made a lot more money.
Oh yeah.
And she sacrificed it. She sacrificed it for her work and her passion and
her activism.
Absolutely. And so when you think about applauding her, that's what I applaud her for.
Yeah, she was really quiet. And the other cool thing that I was talking to you about that I would love to do is I have that footage, which was her last interview, I think. Maybe she was interviewed for something else, but this is a woman of the year in this community. Right. She's done a lot, and we did this interview for Launch Northwest, and we never used it because she passed away, and I think they were like, we just didn't seem appropriate, didn't have permission, it was too soon, it was whatever. Sure. But I still have that interview on in our footage, and it occurred to me, we were talking about her in one of the podcasts. And I just thought that would make a really cool podcast. Would be to play that interview because people got a chance to see her, again. And so I want help doing that because I'm not going to do that without Carl Maxey Center knowing, without her family knowing and being cool about it and let them watch it or whatever. But hopefully we can get that done because I think that would be just the coolest. It wasn't exactly the podcast that we intended, but it was pretty close, and she was talking about things she cared about. So if you can help me make that happen, I'd love it.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. The other part of your life and I've been, we had talked about the last couple of years. I've been on a big project called Housing and Help, which is all dealing with the homeless issue, and the lack of housing that we have here in this community. I'm working on another project right now about that. That's just we need more housing in this community because it's a problem. And how these all kind of, everything sort of intersects.
Sure.
The other piece of that is incarceration. So what do? You have 2 jobs. Tell me about your day job.
So,
or maybe this is not your day job, but your other job.
Yeah. So right now I'm a correctional program manager. Oversee all the programs, education, all the self-help programs, all the different programs that we have for the incarcerated population, which is extremely, extremely important.
Is that for the Spokane County? Who do you work for?
I work for Airway Heights Correctional Center, which is the state facility, which everybody's kind of tucked away down the street from the casino, so nobody really knows. But it's
a state. It's a state run.
Yeah. So you have people who are getting out tomorrow to people who will never get out, and so
wow.
And
how many people are there?
Almost 2,000.
Is that right?
Yeah. Almost 2,000.
Kind of this hidden thing.
Absolutely, and people, when everybody thinks it's Geiger or county jail, and so, but you have a huge incarcerated population, and so
it's a huge amount of people in this country.
Absolutely, and growing.
And the numbers are disproportionately people of color.
Absolutely,
and always kind of have been.
Absolutely.
So what have you learned on your journey there, and what is your main job?
So when I started, I was an officer, became a sergeant, became a counselor, and then became what's called a custody unit supervisor, where I supervise counselors and sergeants.
So you've kind of seen it all.
So yeah, now I'm doing a program manager position to oversee programs, and I think that overseeing the programs is so significant. Because it gives individuals an opportunity that they may not have. One of the things that I've seen, I tell people I have an occupation, I have a vocation. My occupation is a program manager. My vocation is a pastor. And so one of the things that I've seen over the years, and is dealing with individual. When I first started, I was a youth counselor at the East Central Community Center, and so when I first went to work as a correctional officer, I saw a lot of young men who came out of my community, who
people
came to
you
prison.
knew.
Yeah, that I was their youth counselor.
Wow.
And it was very, very disheartening. It was very disheartening.
That must have been tough.
Oh, it was heartbreaking because I had personal relationship with some of those guys, and I knew their families, and knew their moms, knew how brokenhearted their moms are, and then to see them in that environment, which is a difficult environment. One of the things that I think that I've learned and my passion for serving my community comes from the fact that I don't want to ever see anybody. I don't want to see anybody in prison, but obviously I don't want to see anybody that I love in prison. I don't want to see people I deal with in prison. If I had to lose my job because we didn't have enough people in prison, I'd be okay with it. I want to make sure.
Right. You want to eliminate your job.
Absolutely. I really dealing in the schools. I coach football, coach wrestling, all these different things, and that was always my service to try to give back, to have a relationship with young men and women in our community. But as of recent, one of my goals as I near the end of my career is to figure out, and kind of develop a program that will, one, help people be diverted to go to prison. Two, is to help people come out of prison and be successful. And as I near the end of my career, I think one of the things that I want to be my personal legacy is to do that. How do we, and obviously have a lot of insight. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of things that we can do. But that's probably one of the things that, especially these last couple of years, that I really thought about. Man, I want to develop a program that works. I've seen everything that doesn't work over the last 28 years.
All the attempts.
Yeah, I've seen all the things, and just about every program has a piece of it right. I just think that we can put together such, with a collaborative effort, I think we can put together a significant program that will dissuade a lot of people from going to prison and help a lot of people come out of prison and be successful.
Well, that's something to work on.
Absolutely.
What do people not know they should know? Because it is an easy thing to
Right.
just.
Absolutely.
And one of the things we've learned about on the homeless issue is I can just drive by them and not
Absolutely.
and dehumanize the whole experience of it. And the project we worked on was really one of the goals was to humanize it.
Yeah.
You know, we went to Camp Hope and hung out and filmed it
Right.
and talked to people who live there and why is this happening and what's going on. Faced it, you know.
Right.
But this is an issue that just gets shelved.
Well, here's the big. So at least Camp Hope, you would drive by and see it. You're not going to drive by the prison
Don't
and see
even
it
see
unless you're intentional about it.
Boy, that's
and
true.
one of the things that we have to understand is 97% of everybody in prison is coming out of prison. There's not a huge population of people who are never going to come out. So you're going to have to deal with it sooner or later.
They come out.
They come out and
They may go back, but they come out.
yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I said is that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people may not have had somebody affected in their family, a friend that they. If you ask people now, they know somebody who's went to family member in prison.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, and this was I was doing a Juneteenth program, and I invited my dad to come in, and I just expect him to kind of do the Martin Luther King, I have a dream speech and say a few words, and he didn't, and he just spoke real plain to about 120 incarcerated individuals. He talked real plain to them, and he said, I'm angry with you. And he said, I need you guys back in the community, but I don't want you back the way you are. He said, I don't want you to come out and do what you've done before. He goes, I want you to come out, and he goes, I want you to take back your kids. I want you to be a father. He goes, I want you to take back your community. I want you to serve your community.
Well,
and if you don't want to do that, stay in here. And I never heard him talk like that before.
Wow.
I mean, he was just
what did
like
they
really,
think?
It was overwhelming. You could have heard a pin drop. You could have heard a pin drop. And
Personal responsibility.
Absolutely. And he said, I want you to be men. And and he said, and I want you to act like it when you come out. And I was thinking, I was looking around like, am I gonna get in trouble for this?
Right, because you called it like it was.
I had never heard him that direct before. I mean, he would whatever motivated him that day. He was different. He's usually very jovial.
Yeah, no kidding.
He's
Yeah.
usually,
I know that's not the happy I've seen. I've only seen it a few times, but I can see him doing that though.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest with you, and this is what he kind of said at the end. He said, and I was thinking this as it was going on, and he ended up kind of saying it at the end that this is what I would tell my own sons. And he said, I love you guys like I love my sons. Oh. And he said, and this is exactly what I tell my own sons. And he goes, he goes, if my sons were in here, I wouldn't come in here joking and playing and all that kind of stuff. I'd tell them what they needed to know to get out and be successful.
Right.
And so that was that's about 5 years ago. And I was, when he was done, and when he was done, man, everybody was like a standing ovation.
Oh wow!
You could see
emotion.
You see a lot of emotion. And he at one point when I first got there, he was a visiting minister, and they used to call it Happy Time.
That's cool.
When I first got there, and I think that's what everybody was expecting.
Happy Time.
He was trying to,
but they got the dad, grandpa they didn't have.
Absolutely.
In their lives, maybe.
And that's. If there's something that's missing, it's them not having. If you look at across the nation, and this isn't specific to race, but if you look across the nation of incarcerated individuals, male, female, 90% didn't have a father or a significant positive male role model in the home. 90%. That
does not surprise me. Does it surprise you?
I
mean, that's a really high number.
So when I
9 out of 10.
So I didn't. I'm always leery of following statistics.
Right.
Until I could back it up with 28 years of talking to individuals, and I know it's a statistic.
That's your experience as well.
That's my experience. And so how do we change that?
How do we do that?
How do I think that we have to
we got to figure that out.
That's.
We should do that.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, I always feel like everything I do is it's a story problem.
Right.
I'm a story guy.
Right.
And it's like, most of the stuff just isn't getting talked about.
Right.
Or it's not getting told right. Or that's a big part of it anyway.
Right.
So I want to figure out how to do that.
You
There's got to be a way to at least increase that.
Absolutely.
Hey, what if we drop that number from 9 out of 10 to 7 out of 10? That'd be enormous for this world.
You would see such a significant
different country.
decrease. One of the I had probably been working in the prison about 15 years, and I had an individual who came to me, and it's really struck home for me. It's something that I always knew, but I probably didn't acknowledge like I should have the significance of my father in the home, right?
Oh yeah,
the
ripple effect.
Absolutely. And he came to me and he said, I wish I would have had a father in the home. He said I was a great athlete. He said, but when it was time to hold me accountable, my mother couldn't hold me accountable. Mm-hmm. And he said, if I had a dad in the home, he said I got a college scholarship and I ended here because I had no discipline. I had nobody to hold me accountable. And he said, I just wish I would have had a father like yours.
Yeah.
Man, I went home thinking, like, man, I've always appreciated my dad.
Boy, do I appreciate him today.
But I appreciate him a whole heck of a lot more that
Well,
day.
and you're doing it too.
Yeah.
And Ephraim's going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are, that's the thing, the ripple of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the impact that you have.
So look at the positive that a father, and then look at if you flip the coin, look at what happens when they're absent.
Right.
And so when you're thinking about it, we've developed every program to deal with every criminogenic thinking,
you've seen them all,
substance abuse, everything, given incentives, everything else. If you want to change that landscape, that's I honestly believe, and I've argued with people. And I honestly believe that's what you got to do, and you got to start teaching. You got to start teaching young men to be fathers and responsible and accountable. Yep. The things that we got taught by our fathers that were not taught in homes.
Right. Yeah. No. And I had this. I was talking to a counselor, with my kids one time, and I was like, sometimes I feel like I'm too much of a hard ass,
Me too.
And she was great. She goes, I want you to watch this YouTube video. Yeah. She sent me this YouTube video. I'm like, what are you sending me? She goes, go watch that and then come back, talk to me next week. And I'm like, okay. I'm not a divorced dad. I'm trying to, make life with my kids great. And I watched this video. I play it on. I turn it on, and it's this little 60 minutes piece on these elephants in Africa, a herd of elephants that were without a male in the group. So there'd been a male, and the male had been poached or killed by somebody, and it was two females and 4 basically, junior high juvenile male elephants, and they were trashing everything. The place was their experience was not good. They were beating each other up. They were getting everything in the way. It was just chaos in this. They were being watched by these scientists who were just like, this is chaos.
Right.
And they're going through their travels, and a male comes along that's not part of their things, and he kicks their tails, literally, sets them all down, beats them all up, and they go back in line, and everybody goes along. And she goes, it's okay sometimes to be the papa elephant.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, oh, you don't have to be a jerk about it.
Absolutely.
You don't have to cross a line. You've got to, but that firmness can get sort of missed, in this world anymore. Yeah. And I understood that, okay, I don't feel so bad for holding a line, and and my kids have turned out awesome so far. And your kids have turned out awesome. You got to have that, right? And I think that's what you're talking about a little bit somehow.
At
least be there.
A lot. Being president is obviously the first phase. But you have a lot of men in prison who have never been affirmed by another man.
Right.
They've never, I'm as much as I'm probably a tough guy, tough on my kids. I'm also very loving and hugging. They can't stand it. I
me
hug
too.
them.
Oh
And,
my God.
and
I say I love you we hang up the phone every time.
and so my wife, my wife came from a very female dominated family, so she doesn't understand why we wrestle all the time and we play around and
break shit.
Yeah, absolutely. that too. And so I tell her, I said, man, I come from I have to go into a place that I see every day where I could tell like men are not affirmed. They haven't had a touch. They haven't had a positive touch. I deal with guys whose dads put a needle in their arm or gave them their first hit of dope. Or molested, those kind of things, and so
that's their experience with the real male role model.
Absolutely, and so think about how your whole life shifts and how your thinking changes when you come from that dynamic, as opposed to a father who's got up every day and worked and provided and provided discipline,
lived an example.
Yeah, lived an example. They don't have it, and
that's the great challenge, isn't it?
I think it's. People can argue with me. I just need you to have more experience working.
That makes a ton of sense to me. The substance abuse and the mental illness and
all that.
The homelessness, all of that stuff's connected, but a lot of it is connected to this.
Well, if you look at it, a home where there's not a father, everything you just mentioned is increased threefold. Yeah. Right.
The opportunity for those things to happen.
And I shared with somebody who was a counselor. I said here's a dynamic, and it's very easily provable. I said children who are raised by their father have the same advantages as a 2-parent household. Right, and when you look at
interesting.
When you look at all the statistics, very similar.
Interesting.
When a father's not in the home, and I'm not dissing single mothers at all.
Oh my God, no.
I'm not at all.
They're amazing.
Yeah. But when the father's not in the home, you have almost the flip side of every statistic, every negative statistic. Wow. And so you can't tell me that's not
a factor.
That's not a huge factor. We have a huge population, for my church size, of men who are fathers, and so when we have young men, who don't have a father or a role model, man, we take those kids in and we love on them, and we
see the importance of that.
Absolutely. I just shared with a young man who's 22. He's never had anybody to show him how to tie a tie. He's going for a job interview. Nobody's ever showed him how to tie a tie. Right. So he doesn't. So what is?
It's not a skill.
Yeah. So what is it, man? I don't like ties.
Right.
Because nobody's ever showed me how to tie one.
Right.
And so when you think about that dynamic, and then you think about how it impacts my community. It even impacts my community at a greater extent.
Yeah.
And,
no, I feel it. You and I both feel it. I used to take my stepson Keenan to school. And eat with his two buddies, and I would just drive him every day. Like your dad did. Your dad would take him to school every morning. So I thought, I got a 15-minute opportunity here, or whatever it was, to drive them wherever they were going. They're all Montessori kids, so I took them to the Montessori school. And I'm like, all right, we're gonna have gentleman classes every day. So I would just sort of tell them, this is something you need to know. Right. Absolutely. And I kind of made up, and I did a research, and I would sort of prepare my little speech for that day. But I'd ask them, give them scenarios, and it's just like, hey man, this is, you guys need to know this stuff, because I don't know how much they're getting of that, you know. And even if they're getting it again, and they already got it from their dad, fine. But you guys need to know this is sort of how you treat people, and this is the way to be. And I felt it. I felt it enough to say it. Well, and I think that's a huge. You don't know what those messages end up landing. Right. I
coached junior high football for probably 23 years, and got to coach Ephraim, got to coach all my sons, my nephews, and it was. And I realized from the beginning of the time that I started coaching to the last several years, one of the things that I saw was, or that became more commonplace, moms would bring now I'm just a football coach. I got them a couple hours a day, a few days a week, and on Saturday, moms would bring their kids to me to discipline them. because they acted up at home. I remember having a mom saying, I can't wait for football because he's just acting crazy at home.
Right.
But during football season, I laid an expectation.
Right.
And he met it. And it's funny because I used to always tell most of the parents, you're probably not going to like me at the beginning of football and your kids aren't going to like me. But I said, I promise you by the mid-season, they're going to love me.
Yeah.
You know, because and
they'll be better to deal with at home.
Absolutely. I mean, make a huge investment in your kid, you know, and there's just not enough. There's just not enough of that going on, and there's not enough men making a huge investment.
Oh, I think football is one of the biggest things,
Yeah.
experiences I had, that especially at prep, that community, that bond that you have with those guys and what you go through, and you know, all the things that matter, accountability and trust in your teammates, and you know, they really, I'm shocked at how much I learned from that experience of going through that with the coaches that were there who were phenomenal. You know those guys, the Clarence Huffs of the world, and Don Andersons and Bob Petersons and all those guys, just the way they handle themselves, the class that they handle themselves with. They, you know, we never played dirty. At least I didn't think we did. You know, we sort of rose above, and just the whole way they sort of how to handle yourselves and be classy, and how to work together. I still use that every day with the team that I have, and I mean, that stuff doesn't leave. No. It's a real big imprint at that age. Yeah. A big one. Yeah. So if you had a magic wand and you could wave it, especially when it comes to this issue of incarceration and young men, and what would you do if you got to be king for a day?
Boy, that's a tough
what
one.
would you do? And maybe there's no way of answering that, but
I thought about it, and if I had the resources, you know, I would take these, especially, you know, obviously I haven't dealt with female incarcerates, so I'm dealing primarily with male incarcerates. Those who, and I don't want to say like boot camp, like military, but kind of, man, I would have a facility. I really would. I would have a facility, and I would find out what they're lacking. It would be like boot camp. It would be an area where you would have to you'd have a high level of accountability.
Football.
Physical. I think physical fitness is huge. But we would start from ground zero. I would start with ground zero from everybody and prepare them. Prison doesn't prepare you for to leave and to be successful.
No, it doesn't.
There's things you can do. Definitely to prepare yourself. There's work programs, and I'm not dissing the prison system because I understand
the reality of it.
Yeah, the reality and the limitations. But what I would do is I would have a facility where every, you know, and it would be those who are willing to come in, and I would take them from ground zero and teach them everything I believe that they need to know, from appropriate contact with women to how to raise your kids, to making sure you know how to clean a toilet, that you know how to cook your own food, that you know how to pay your own bills,
to have some spiritual quiet time in your life.
Spiritual quiet, which is huge, and not also the second piece that's not talked about a lot, along with fathers, is the spiritual life, and I would prepare them to go out into the world, and I would have at least 3 male mentors for every young man.
That's a great idea.
I'm telling you, and that would follow them through this whole process and follow them. You know, when you have people who lived in the street and live criminal life, and not everybody who comes to prison does, but when you have them and they leave the prison system, you know, for the vast majority of people that I run into on the street, it feels like like we went to college together, because I have that time with them. You know, even though I got to hold them in tow, even though I got to make sure that they're doing X, Y, Z, even though, you know,
you're still in relationship with them.
But they respond because I also don't look down on them, and I also want them to achieve. I want them to
they
be
can
successful.
Feel that.
And so the vast majority, you know, if it was me, I would make sure that I would break it up into like 3 phases, and when you get to phase 3, you are ready, and we will help you find employment.
I mean, that would be a hell of a pilot program.
Yeah, it really would.
Probably has been done somewhere. Maybe
a lot of it has pieces, but I want 100%.
So interesting. I had a guy named Alan Giebel who he was the ASP president at Prep as well when I was like a freshman, and he was here in town at a reunion. And he was like my hero because he was,
Right.
the senior when I was a friend. Amazing guy, and he's been a business guy and was on this podcast, and business guy in Singapore, in the Eastern Rim for 30 years, and he's lived there.
Wow.
He comes back and forth, and I was asking him, "What do you watch America from afar?" And he was really embarrassed by the last 5 years, 10 years anyway, 5 years anyway, of just how America's seen in the eyes of the world.
Absolutely.
And kind of ticked off about it. And he said, I go, well, what would you do if you had your magic wand? And he said, what would you do for America if you got to do something? And he said, I would institute a national service plan for everyone who's 18 to 22. That you have to serve a year or two in service to this country somehow. Mm-hmm. They do it in Singapore, and it's been remarkably effective. Whether that's working somehow in a way that helps the community. And I'm Absolutely. Like, boy, we need help in mental health. We need help in, substance abuse, even Absolutely. The counseling part of that. But no different than the Civil Conservation Corps that happened in the 1930s and 40s that Roosevelt put in to get us out of the Depression. People went and worked, man. And they worked together, and they made bonds and friends that we all made Absolutely. On the football field. It's not dissimilar. Yeah. He goes, I would absolutely do that. That you are required to give some kind of service to your country in some way of service that builds bridges or whatever, or does whatever, and physically or and I'm hearing sort of some of the similar things here, Absolutely. At least for that community. Absolutely. And I would. The other program that we just were a part of filming, which is actually in the East Central community, is St. Anne's Church, and an amazing lady that is doing work with people that are homeless, hiring them as grounds crew to take care of the church. And she put this pilot program in, paid them well, and has built an amazing community that kind of blew her away. She thought, I thought everybody would not show up, that they wouldn't care, that they wouldn't do good work, that they would steal, and none of that has happened. Right. These are the most immaculate. It is the most immaculate place you've ever seen. They all work really hard. They all can't wait to work for the next time. They appreciate being paid, and it is completely counterintuitive than what she thought would happen. Yeah. You're thinking the same thing.
Absolutely.
Given an opportunity.
Given an opportunity to build a trade, to learn a trade, to make money, and to and what people don't what we don't realize is that as especially for men, it's a respect thing.
Oh yeah.
So they the way they perceive respect is by who's the toughest individual. But when you look at it, and these guys, this is honest truth. I dealt with an individual, and he had called me, and he'd been in prison for probably 15 years, and he had called me, and he said the scariest thing that he ever had to do was to go to a school, go to school for his kid. Because he's been locked up his whole life. Oh,
it was like what's your dad do day?
Yeah, and he went and he had to go talk to a principal. Oh, and he had to go discuss, he was horrified. He was horrified because nobody ever did it for him.
Oh, he doesn't have fish out of water.
He doesn't have that experience. He doesn't feel comfortable talking about. He doesn't, so he just said he was horrified. If you had a man to go with him. If you had a man to have a discussion with him and say, "Hey, listen, these are the things you ask.
Here's what you're going to expect.
Here's what you're going to expect. Here's what you
won't be so bad."
Yeah, he's going to have some apprehension, but definitely he's going to feel far more confident. And so, but one of the things that he said was, he said he didn't really say anything, and what he did say, he stumbled over, but he could see that after years of being in prison, that his kid, was kind of glad he was home, but the respect wasn't there. And he said, from that little transaction of going to school for this kid
on his behalf,
he saw a change in his kid.
Wow.
He never
looked at him.
Yeah, he never had it for his dad because his dad never did it.
Right.
And so things that me and you probably have taken for granted. I didn't want my dad to come to school because usually that meant, I acted up. And
you were in trouble. Me too. Yeah. You don't want that coming.
Yeah. So, but even so, that kid wants that.
Right.
He wants to know because in that he knows his dad loves him. His dad cares for him.
I mean, I don't know. I just look at the whole thing and go, these are amazing. Every person's incredible.
Yeah.
That's my experience which is why I do this, because I get to meet so many different people and they're all cool. I mean, they're all interesting.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, we have a shortage of trades in this country.
Right.
We have manufacturing companies dying to train people
Absolutely.
to do those trades.
Right.
And we have 2,000 people sitting out here, mostly male, not contributing and wanting to.
Right.
Maybe not knowing it, and maybe not all of them can.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a solution here. Creative solutions around stuff to try some stuff, man.
Absolutely. I just think that, like I said, I've worked in this environment for 28 years. I've seen all the negatives. Don't get me wrong. I've seen a lot of positives of people come out. I got men come to my church who have come out of prison and have been successful.
Have made it.
Largely and partly because somebody else, a family invested in them, but males invested in them.
Interesting.
And I just think that's grossly lacking when you look at, and this is just a statistic for my community. You look at 1968 when Dr. King died. Over 80% of black children came out of a two-parent home, and now
80%,
over 80%. Now you're talking about 30%. And when you look at the change, so I really, primarily dad not at home. And I mean, I know we keep focusing on this, and there's so many other things that you could throw in there, but for me,
when it boils down to it,
I just see
shift that one thing.
It just seems like everything else is addressed, and it's over addressed, and that's under addressed.
Yeah.
Well,
James, I could talk to you all day, man. I think we have.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
And talking about this. And I'm serious. Let's see if we can figure out how to get some of this done. That's a brilliant idea.
Love to.
Well, cheers to you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here
Absolutely.
on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And, I have a feeling you'll be back. We got more to talk about.
Anytime. Love to come back.
Awesome.
MIP Podcast was filmed at the studio of Corner Booth Media. Please sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere podcasts can be found.
We'd love it if you'd rate, review, and subscribe to help our podcast grow. Be good to yourself and stay interesting.